call to the meeting to order at 6:32. First up is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Celeste, any new agenda changes? Okay. So we're good.
But the new position was the new position added then, or no?
Yes.
Thank you, Celeste.
Okay, well, moving on, the next item is board recognition. The board is going to recognize Ian McDougall and Laurel Hallberg. In December 2022, this Board of Education passed a resolution to create a quarterly Board of Education Recognition Award to honor one staff or community member and one student each quarter. Staff or community members chosen for this award should provide exemplary assistance in helping the Board of Education achieve its mission to support every student as they fulfill their dreams and aspirations for the future, or help the board meet its goals related to academic achievement, personal development, facilities and finance, culture, partnerships, or communication. The student chosen for this award should exhibit one or more of the exemplary character traits that are prized and nurtured at DCS: critical thinking, resilience, compassion, or self-direction. Nominations are made by principals, the Assistant Superintendent for Management Services, or the Superintendent of Schools, and voted on by members of the Board of Education. Nominees must receive unanimous consent by the board in order to receive the recognition. It gives me great pleasure to announce our first recipients of the DCS Board of Education Recognition Award. Laurel Hallberg, our district school psychologist, and Ian McDougall, a senior at Duanesburg High School. Please allow me to read from the nominations that came in for our two recipients. Laurel Hallberg is our district school psychologist. She has been and continues to be an indispensable member of the faculty. Her knowledge of child development and how to rethink supporting students in the classroom is unmatched. She takes not only the standardized data, but day-to-day habits of the students to help create solutions and interventions that will allow the student to grow. Laurel is one of the first people to step in with students that need help with overwhelming emotions anywhere they may occur. She is a true asset to our district. Laurel, would you come down, please? Congratulations. Thank you very much. Grateful to have you in our school. Ian McDougall is a senior at Duanesburg High School. When he first came to us, Ian needed assistance with many things to help him be a successful student. Now, in his 12th grade year, Ian is a model of overcoming obstacles and growing as a whole person. He's taking VOTEC classes, is a member of our varsity bowling team, and is on the mastermind team as well. He is independent and self-reliant, and we are incredibly proud of how he has grown as a student. Ian, would you please come down? Next on the agenda is privilege of the floor. Urges public participation at board meetings during a specific portion of the agenda entitled Privilege of the Floor, Public Comment. The public comment section is not the time or place to register complaints about individuals or items that have not first been addressed through proper channels with those closest to the issue, such as a teacher, the building principal, the superintendent, or other appropriate party. Individuals making statements during privilege of the floor are expected to be courteous and respectful, modeling for our students how one can participate and have their voice heard in situations where there is agreement or disagreement with others' views. If members of the public have gone through proper channels and still wish to discuss a matter with the board, they can submit their comments in writing to the board clerk. At its discretion, the board may invite visitors to its meetings to participate in the board's discussions of matters on the agenda. The public comment section is an opportunity for residents and residents only to address the Board of Education. Public comment should take place only in the portion of the agenda designated. This is usually at the beginning of each meeting. Persons wishing to address the board must indicate their desire to speak in advance on the sign-in sheet. Because the board typically has many business items on its agenda, speakers must confine their comments to 3 minutes. The board will not address specific questions or comments, but may ask for your name and contact information in the event follow-up is necessary. The board will not permit in public session discussion involving individual personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual personnel or students should present their comments and/or concerns to the superintendent, who will share them with the board at the next executive session. Okay, I have the sign-in sheet, and the first person who indicated they wish to speak is Cliff Bradshaw. Please come down to the mic.
Good evening. Good evening. According to the recent News Channel 6 Crisis in the Classroom report, New York State is ranked 30th in the nation when it comes to how much the state allows and encourages parental involvement in our kids' learning, meaning school leaders in 29 other states treat parents better than New York's parents are treated. In this report, New York school leaders were given a D, a 64% average. Over the past 2 years, I've witnessed this at DCS. I give Duanesburg school leaders a failing grade when it comes to being open and informative towards parents. Here's one example. This year's DCS Safety Forum was held on January 17th. 53 minutes into this virtual meeting, our student counselors, Josh and Christina, were explaining what they do when a teacher sends a struggling student down to them. During the conversation, Christina states, quote, "Teachers are very in tune to the students and can pick up on even the littlest kind of shift in behavior or mood. When that does happen,
Cliff,
like..."
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we can't name individual faculty and staff.
I didn't name
You did.
last names.
We can't use their names, please.
Okay, I won't use their names. Can I continue? Okay. Teachers were very in tune to their students and can pick up on even the littlest kind of shift in behavior. When this does happen, like Blank said, they do let us know, and we're able to check in with the student to kind of get a better idea. Is the student just having a bad day, or is something really going on? And then, obviously, if it's something bigger, we would loop in the parents, end quote. There's a serious systemic problem with the Waynesburg Schools process when it comes to informing parents of incidents and struggles involving our children. The mindset that parents should only be informed if the concern is, quote, something bigger, is wrong. If a student is sent down to blank and blank by a concerned teacher, that student's parents should be called immediately, every time, with no exceptions. Parents need to have the right to be looped in from the start. Parents have the right to know everything that is going on with our children during school hours. The decision whether to involve parents is simple. Always involve parents. Call me every time, big or small. Most parents in Duanesburg want more openness and transparency from our school leaders. As parents, it is our right to know everything that involves our children behind these walls. I don't want appeasement from my district superintendent. I want action from our school leaders. I ask the school board to show that you support increasing parental involvement by openly discussing the 2 suggested policy changes I recently emailed you and by adding them to the March Board of Education meeting agenda. Both changes would make DCS a more parent-friendly district. Finally, please represent the majority of Duanesburg parents by voting yes to Resolution 1 and Resolution 2 and against a harmful student COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Thank you.
Okay, the next person that indicated they wish to speak is Martha Frank.
Good evening. My comments are in regard to Resolution 1 and 2 on the Board of Ed agenda this evening. I regularly look at the agenda. I was a little bit surprised to see those resolutions. I'm concerned because the spread of disinformation in the U.S. continues. I'm concerned that vaccinations are used as talking points for purposes other than health and safety of children. It's unclear to me why a Board of Ed committee would spend any amount of time encroaching on parental rights or opinions related to the health care their child receives because of some future possible legislation they, as members of the board, might not agree with. All parents understand the current immunization requirements needed for their child to enter a licensed daycare program or a public school. If a parent has a concern with state public health law, they do have some options. Legal requirements for school attendance in New York State are established in the state's public health law. The state does not mandate all of the vaccine the CDC recommends on its routine vaccination schedule for children. For example, HPV and the flu are 2 examples of that. It would seem that at the point there is a legislative proposal about COVID vaccines or others moving through committees in both New York legislative bodies, parents and others in New York will have ample opportunity to have their voices heard. Healthy debate is a great thing, but my question is, what is the point of a Board of Ed committee raising the issue now as a future something that may or may not happen? Always best practice, in my opinion, to put reality items before the public when seeking input or feedback. These resolutions seek to address hypothetical issues which seem to me to fall outside the purview of the Board of Education. I think the board could spend its time and put it to better use for the children in our schools than to focus on these 2 resolutions. So thank you.
And the last person who indicated they wish to speak is Jennifer Sexton.
Good evening. My comment is also in regards to Resolutions 1 and 2 on tonight's school board agenda. The resolutions discuss whether our school board should survey parents and lobby our state legislature to halt any requirement that students are to receive the COVID-19 vaccine, in addition to other state-mandated immunizations. After reading state documents, it is my understanding that the immunizations required for students to attend public schools are created in state law. Even the health department cannot change nor regulate these rules. If parents have concerns about state legislatures moving COVID-19 to become a required immunization to attend school, they should share those concerns by directly contacting their state legislators. It's in our district's overall best interest to have the school board spend their time and our resources on issues within their jurisdiction. not on issues they have no control over, nor are pressing in nature to the overall well-being of our students, staff, and programs. Whether you are in support of the vaccine or not, it simply comes down to the fact that it's not the purview of our school board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our public comment. Next up are reports, and first is the superintendent's report.
Very much. I'm going to use my time this week, or this meeting and next meeting, to talk about some of the different pathways that our students may take when they're at Duanesburg. So it's really important for me that everybody knows that when we are approaching any student in our schools, that we don't dictate what their path is going to be. We just want to make sure that they're best prepared for whatever path is in their future. So whether that's work or the military or pursuing a trade or college, all of these are valid options that kids have. And the reality of everything is that over the course of their lives, students are going to change jobs many different times. So the idea that there's just one of these paths isn't even accurate, because they'll probably end up taking multiple paths. So I'm saying that up front just to tell you that tonight I'm going to talk about our college prep program. So I'm going to talk about AP and UHS classes. But the next meeting that we have, I'm also going to talk about our career prep programs at BOCES, at CTE programs, Tech Valley, and also New Visions programs. So just because I'm talking about this tonight, it's only because I don't want to talk about everything tonight, because we have other things to talk about. But I will be talking about that at the next meeting. So we do offer a lot of UHS and AP classes. So these classes are pretty unique. So we have many classes are offered through Schenectady County Community College, or SUNY Schenectady. We have all of these courses are either 3 or 4 credit courses. And so generally they're offered for a very reduced rate, very small amount compared to the amount that students would pay if they were actually taking these courses at college. So it's really advantageous for parents to have their students take these classes, if not just for the fact that, you know, it might be that these count as electives in college, but it'll still save them either time that they could use to take courses that are in their area of interest, or it'll actually, you know, reduce some of the courses that they might need to take. Some of the other benefits that this might have is that students might actually come in with advanced standing and get special privileges like preferred housing preference, which is always something that's desirable to kids. But like I said, these courses are generally pretty low cost. We also have, and also you should know that all of the teachers that we have that teach these UHS classes are DCS teachers that have all been approved by these colleges to teach these courses as adjunct professors. So they're essentially teaching the same curriculum that would be taught in college, but in school, in high school. So our teachers that get approved for these have to go through a really rigorous process that looks at their credentials, looks at their transcripts, makes sure that their syllabi are aligned to the college's syllabi. And so they are essentially getting the same content that they would at one of these schools. The AP classes are a little different. So the AP classes don't have as thorough vetting process for the instructors, because the credits don't come from the instructors themselves. So whereas in the other two examples, so in UHS examples, teachers are awarding those credits at the end of the year based on passage of the course. On the APs, students only get credit for those classes if they score a certain number on those exams. And generally, the lowest that they could score is a 3, and but a 3, 4, or 5 generally equates to some kind of college credit, depending on the college that you're talking about. Some colleges don't take into consideration that students have earned college credit. You can certainly choose not to do that if you're a private college especially. Most of the SUNYs do take all of these things into consideration. But some private colleges will say, that's very nice that you took these classes. They were all very challenging. However, you're going to have to take our calculus anyway. And that's okay, because still what those private colleges are looking for is that students challenge themselves with the most challenging courses that were available at their high school. That's really important. That's actually probably more important than the grades students have on their transcripts, is what were the classes that students were taking compared to the classes that were available for other students to take. So I think it's really excellent that we have so many different classes for students to take while they're in high school. So many, in fact, that our students can actually earn an associate's degree while they're in high school. But this is only growing, so we are always looking at our elective courses to see if some of those courses can be converted from just local credit to college credit. We're always looking at different college partners to see if maybe there's some courses that they might offer at a SUNY Cobleskill that they don't offer at SUNY Schenectady that we might be able to take advantage of here. And there's also distance learning. So we offer some of our college credit bearing classes over the distance learning network to students at other schools, which also brings in revenue for the school district. But also our students are able to take virtually any class that they want that fits in their schedule, which is a big caveat sometimes. They're able to take those distance learning classes over our network here. So there's a lot to offer. What I thought would be good was for you to hear from some teachers and some students themselves. So I put together a little video that has audio in it. And so just making sure. But let's see if this works.
So what are the benefits of taking an AP or UHS class? There's many, but especially what I think is important is that it gives students a chance in high school to challenge themselves beyond the level of what's the regular class. So it gives students a chance to really dig deeper and go deeper into a subject that they may like. And also gives them a chance to be with students who are also as interested, which also I think encourages them to become more excited and be more committed to a subject.
My name is Ryan Martin. I'm a junior. I take 3 AP and UHS classes, English, US history, and Spanish. I definitely like to attend college. Not exactly sure where, but I'd like to go into something maybe computer science or possibly law. And I feel like the classes are a good way to give me a head start and kind of warm me up to the college experience.
So AP classes are great stepping stones for students because they're able to experience the structure that a AP class has. That's very similar to college, so we have a little bit more of a setup where you have more discussion-based. It's not as much teacher-directed and more student-led, and they're able to hone in on those skills that they would use in all their disciplines.
I'm Shannon. I'm a junior here at Williamsburg, and I'm currently taking 4 AP UHS classes. I'm taking AP Bio, AP US History, Pre-Calc, and Spanish 4. In AP classes, you get every detail about every single thing you learn. It's really motivating and just like keeps you enthralled the entire year. I plan on majoring in bio, probably minoring in chemistry. And I'm currently taking like AP Bio, which helps me get the basics to get into Bio 101 in college.
Just to close out, I'll say that if you remember the data that I presented at the beginning of this year, we had more students take AP exams than we ever have before last year during a pandemic. We had more students also achieving 3s, 4s, and 5s than ever before. And so one of the things that's leading to greater participation in AP is the fact that our district doesn't put restrictions on who can take these classes. So there aren't any barriers to prevent somebody having to take some kind of prerequisite or get closed out of a course. So if students want to take it and they're willing to put in the time, they can take these classes. So that's a bit about our AP and UHS program. Does anybody have any questions about that? Yes.
2 questions. One, do we support tuition for students that are in need?
So there are programs that support students in need, especially through the AP program. We also were able to partner with, I think it was DEF this year, right? DEF was able to provide a donation that reduced the price of those AP exams even further. If you are a SUNY student, there also are some tuition aids for those students as well. But yeah,
Excellent, because even at a reduced tuition,
it's still
right,
expensive.
still expensive, right?
You're right.
And then the other question is just, are the teachers that we have in the building that have been, approved to teach the UHS classes, are they compensated as adjunct faculty, or do they just do it out of the goodness of their hearts?
Well, they're doing it as part of their assignment, so it's not totally out of the goodness of their heart.
Okay.
No.
But they're
So
not compensated extra, so they're doing lots of extra work. But
no, our teachers aren't getting extra money to teach these classes.
Is there a stipend, though, that the school gets for, 'cause like for SUNY Albany, I know, but we get a stipend as a district?
For SUNY
those
Schenectady, I'm not
courses?
sure if SUNY Schenectady provides us a stipend, Jeff. I don't think so. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Next up is the report from the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services on budget.
All right, so tonight we'll have our first budget work session of 3 budget work sessions for this year.
Second one, is it?
So what's that?
It's the second one.
Oh, yeah, I guess it is. I guess it is. That's right. So tonight we'll talk about the main topic that we'll be talking about. This is not working. Is where we're starting from. So we had looked at this slide at the last meeting. Some of our challenges that we're going to continue to see is that fiscal cliff that's coming in sooner than later. That state aid is not actually keeping up with inflation. And then we have the challenge of trying to keep up with all of our programs that we are running here in Duanesburg. So trying to keep up with being able to afford those instructional programs, contractual obligations that we are tied to, which is a very large portion of our budget. Insurance costs, and not only just health insurance, but also just the insurance alone to insure our buses and our buildings. Retirement system, those are other things that are out of our hand. Fuel costs, maintenance of our building, and of course transportation. So first we'll talk about the revenue side of where we've started with our budget this year. So the budget is still very much under construction, and what I won't be presenting tonight is an actual total budget, overall budget right now, because there's still a lot of work to do. So just looking at where the revenue is, because we just got our state aid runs on February 1st. So it seemed kind of late this year to get those numbers. And so what we're looking at right now is a proposed of a 1.96% overall tax levy increase. But that's to consider. You should also consider that our tax cap is actually at 3.71. So we've always done our best here in Duanesburg to try and stay well below the tax cap when it's up above 2%. So looking at a current levy increase of only 1.96%, that gives us an overall dollar increase in revenue for the tax levy of $167,321. Total tax levy would be $8,704,132. But because of the fact that we're not going all the way up to the cap, that leaves an additional $149,000 on the table. So there is some room that if we need some more revenue, that we could actually go up to that $149,000. To start the budget out and to start the budget out for the revenue side, this is what we're proposing to try and stay below even that 2% number. Even though the 2% calculation for the state allows us to go up to that 3.71 this year. So some of our tax levy considerations is our total overall budget to budget in draft right now it looks like we could go up almost a $500,000. We're about at $468,000 above budget to budget right now, giving us that the state aid increase this year does not really align to inflation. So over the past year, about a year ago, I presented a presentation that we were talking about inflation. It was near somewhere around 8%. It hasn't really gone too low at this point since then. It's right now, I just looked today, it's somewhere around 6.5%. So it's still very high, and all of the things that we need to purchase, contractual services and supply, are all well above that average 2 or 3% increase that we usually do budget to budget from years prior. So this year, you'll see just a summary on the bottom, just to recap what was on the previous slide, that we do have a cap of 3.71, proposing a 1.96%. The deadline to submit the tax cap calculation, the initial tax cap calculation, will be March 1st. So we do not have another budget work session before that time. So tonight will be the time to discuss that at the end of this presentation, and we'll go back to this slide and we'll talk about it. So the state aid numbers that came through, this year, the foundation aid, again, we got a 3% increase from last year. So this was that final year that we were promised we were going to get that 3% every year. So for 3 years, we got 3% on foundation aid. But again, this doesn't really help us with the fact that inflation has been much higher than 3%. We also recently had found out that we have the expansion for universal pre-kindergarten. I would like to highlight that that isn't part of our general budget because it's funded by a grant. But I just wanted to show that that is there so that when we do talk about pre-kindergarten program, that's actually a grant-funded program, and we're not putting that into our general budget because we're using the grant to pay for that. Some other things that you'll notice are that the transportation aid actually for this year in the governor's run was actually lower than what we had originally budgeted for. So on my next slide, I show that there is a difference. Cut one of my slides out, I'm sorry. So this year's governor's proposal on the state aid for transportation actually was lower than what we had budgeted for. So there's some makeup that if we end up spending a large portion or most of our budget, that we're going to have to make up for that in fund balance as well. So also you'll notice that building aid has declined with our debt service on our building. So we've been paying for our capital project for several years now. So now our building debt is actually going down, and that's why we've gone out and asked the community to start another capital project to maintain our buildings, and that'll maintain our debt. And that also has a play on our tax levy and tax cap too, or our tax cap. This is a look at our revenue summary. So our real property taxes showing that 1.96% increase overall. And then from this proposal is actually showing the state aid increase from the actual governor's run. What I am concerned about, though, is the fund balance here on the bottom, is that we have to balance our budget with fund balance. So the reason why I said we still have some more work to do is because we need to get these numbers down a little bit so that we're not spending above 5% on fund balance. Because that fiscal cliff is really going to come faster if we do start using our savings. So I'm not comfortable with coming out with a number tonight just because of that factor. So this is what we had actually proposed in our budget last year, and you can see that there's a slight difference in our state aid. So it's $8.8 million on the left column there for the 22-23 school year. And then if I go back, it's actually, in the governor's run, it was $8.5 million. So we've got some work to do not only for next year, but we've also got to look out for where we're at for this year. So talking about some of the sections of the budget for this session, we're going to talk about some things in the general support area, and then a couple things in the academic programs section. So first up is the general support budget. And this is the makeup of administration, business expenses, insurances, legal, record keeping, BOCES administrative charges. Those are all in this section. It's a pretty large section, so it's over $1 million. So I've gone through this section, and we've been able to maintain a pretty level budget, I think, with the general support budget. So part of the budget process this year is to really dive down and determine what things we can actually start to cut back out so that we don't have to fund a budget next year with additional fund balance. So some of the things that we keep seeing, the trend is, this is a very similar slide to last year, is that the data processing technology things are all usually like the cause for increases for the past few years. So this is a thing that's actually one of the items that's increased. Cut out some of the budget lines cut out some needs in some of the budget lines, just because looking at trends doesn't look like we're spending those funds. So we cut those right down, try and reflect a budget that's a little more where we're at. Athletics budget. So this makes up of athletics equipment, contractual expenses. So whenever we go to competitions, we take our kids to competitions, we have to pay to get into some of the competitions. Supplies, uniforms. We've also been taking advantage of some BOCES aid by buying some, I'm sorry, Jim, I forget the name of the program.
Huddle.
Huddle, yes.
So that's like a scouting kind of software program to analyze tape of the performance of athletes.
So it gives something for the coaches to be able to analyze their athletes, but taking advantage of that building aid, or that BOCES aid, and then you get that back the following year. So it really helps us to try and get some of that aid back in our state aid runs. So athletics budgets increased a little bit this year. We had stayed pretty level over the past few years. Some of that was very much pandemic related. So some of our contractual costs, as Katie has noted to me, is that contractual expenses are going up. There's officials' fees that are going up, so they set their rates for the officials, and then we're stuck to them. Any of the contractual expenses for competitions, those seem to be rising as well. So all things considered, so we have to increase our athletics budget to make sure that we're set for that. The very small section of the budget, the extracurricular or co-curricular activities section. This was another budget line that I was able to actually reduce to where we're at with our expenditures. So we've actually reduced that by $10,000, just following the trend of seeing that we're not spending that full amount. Some of that may be pandemic related. So the reality is here we're taking our we're trying to responsibly reduce it, but stay kind of where we're expected based on what our contracts are. Instructional technology budget. So this is a part of, we pay our support staff for technology here. Computer hardware is where we buy all of our computers, projectors, monitors, technology devices for the classroom. Also, any contractual expenses like services that we have to purchase for server maintenance from different organizations that service our technology. Supplies, just regular general computer supplies or technology supplies, and then software that teachers use in the classroom. And then applications, we tend to use BOCES a lot for some of those applications that are used in the classroom, and generates that, again, that BOCES aid the following year. So the instructional budget, as we've seen this trend, technology is very necessary to support, because of the fact that it's getting used more and more in the classroom every year. If you take a look around in all of our classrooms, we've got great new technology in a lot of our classrooms. There's touchscreen, there's distance learning technology that's been installed. So in order to support that and the new practices in the classroom, we're looking at a slight increase on technology, $568,000 of a total budget. And then finally, I will leave it up to the board to talk about the tax levy, the categories that we talked about tonight: general support, ECA, and technology.
Thanks, Jeff. So Jeff, you don't need any kind of resolution tonight. You just need some kind of consensus that's
Yes.
On the tax cap.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So does anybody have any questions about any of the sections that Jeff presented, or about the tax levy, or the proposed tax levy, or the tax cap? Yep.
First off, Jeff, thank you. I know this is a lot of work. You'd mentioned a couple times that we have work to do. What are you thinking? I know there's work to do, but what of these budget areas are you thinking we may be able to trim a little bit to get to the number that we need to?
Yep. So that's exactly what I'm looking at, is budget lines that maybe we can trim some excess that may be generating fund balance, right? So also, I just got some numbers today from other departments. So there's no way that I could have finalized those. Like special education just came out from BOCES today. So those kind of things are really still in the works. So if I had given you a budget total tonight, it just wouldn't even been close.
So they'll probably come from all over the place. Like all the different sections are going to have lines in there where the trend doesn't support the current level that it's at, and so we'll reduce that. Special ed's always one in such a small district where it will fluctuate a lot from year to year. I mean, you don't want to totally pare that down. So say you have a year in special ed funding where you don't spend anywhere near what you had budgeted for, you can't really come back down to that base, because you never know who's gonna move into the district, and if you don't have funds available for those people, you could be out of luck and you're pulling from other places. So it's kind of like it's a bonsai tree of a budget. You continually pare away at all the different things to see where we can find some extra bucks to keep those tax dollars low.
So like in your example, Jim, with the special ed maybe fluctuating, is that something where year over year we would put that money into a fund and carry it over into the fund balance?
So it's gonna go into a fund balance anyway. But Jeff, you want to talk about how we fund the reserves? Is that what you're asking, Sarah?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Like how do we account for that money when it's not used from the prior year? How
do we decide when something's not going to be fund balance anymore, but it's actually going to go into one of those funds?
Okay, so when it gets to above that 4%, so we're only allowed to carry a 4% on fund balance. So if there is a year when we actually have above a 4% at the end of the year, we can carry that over to reserves for difficult years. So for
4% of year over year?
4% of your budget.
Okay.
Yep. So if you do have excess funds that you can save for reserves, you put it into a reserve fund, allows you to either fund a year when you may have a difficult year with, say, a fiscal cliff, or say you're just going to have a difficult year because you project that you're going to have less funding. There might be a year when you have less building aid because a capital project wasn't started at the same time when building aid was falling off at the same time. So there's so many things that you can kind of use that reserve fund to plan ahead. In our case, we've been able to save some of that excess fund towards another capital project because we knew we had to do a capital project. And then you don't have to ask to borrow as much, and then we're not paying back on interest. So the money saved is also money saved on a capital project, and it allows you to maintain your facilities and not ask for that borrowing fee.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, my question's related to the extracurricular activities budget.
Sure.
A stipend is like, I don't know, like 1,000-ish. I'm looking at this thinking this is like 10 clubs that are not happening next year. Is that what I'm looking at? Or
So,
like, how can you explain that?
It seems to fluctuate with some of the clubs. Like it's some of the clubs maybe have gone inactive, and they, you know, or there might be one that starts up once in a while too. So it does happen. We've had some clubs that started up. We've had some clubs that have faded out. And I was looking at the trends, and it just seemed like at this point, it doesn't look like we're going to go up to that 75,000. So
So
brought
with
it
this
back down.
number, is there still money if a club wants to start up next year, or would this like cut us down to like what is existing exists and we cannot expand?
It's at the point right now where we could do another club. Because
Like
it's just,
one?
it's typical that we will have a club, you know, start up, but then there's a year, you know, where one falls off
Drops
and
off. Okay.
stops.
All right, thank you.
So they kind of balance each other out.
Okay, thanks.
So I can think of, so the process that we have involves the year before the club is created, it has to run for a year. And so we had a youth wrestling that we actually kind of did something different with. We incorporated that into a new club. But other than that, I think there may be one other club right now that's kind of running that way. So we don't anticipate many more than that. But if somebody has a really good idea and then a strong student interest, then there'll be room for that.
Any idea, I mean, how does the pre-K grant process work? Do you reapply for that every year? Is there a possibility that could end? Because it's such a great program to then, in a dash, figure out how to add it to our budget would be a killer.
Yeah, especially that amount.
Yeah.
So.
I assume it would be then through the standard aid process where, you know, they would be students at that point and the
Right.
math would happen, right?
So we do have to apply every year. You have to fill out an FS10 budget proposal and all that for them to reapply for it. And so far, what it looks like right now is that we'll continue to get it. You know, they haven't said that they're going to take that away, especially since this expansion grant just came out and it just started this year. I'm not sure that they have any intention of pulling that carpet off underneath us right now.
I think it's also important. This current governor, that was one of the only things that she said about education in her State of the State, I think, was about UPK. And she's been strongly supportive of UPK, and actually the local state representatives from both sides of the aisle have been really supportive of the UPK program. So nothing like imminent, not to say that something's not going to change, because there are a lot of complaints about how that UPK funding is actually done. Many schools have not been able to take advantage of any of the money that they have, and they have far more than we do. There was some local school districts that had to send back $600,000 because, one, they couldn't find a nonprofit, or a community partner, because there are none in the community, and that's something that you have to have based on the grant, or they didn't have any space to host a UPK program, so they had to send all their money back and not have a UPK program. So there probably are going to be some changes to UPK funding. It's probably not going to result in the UPK funding going away anytime soon. Anything else? Yeah.
Just hypothetically speaking, okay. If there's a reduction in students for the next school year, a significant reduction, would there be a need for a 1.96 tax levy still, or Because there would be extra funds, right? Or actually, there would be a reduction in federal and state funds, right? If you don't have the students filling the seats.
So right now, I mean, what the governor's given us for a state aid proposal, that's, like, right now, that's what we're assuming. That's what we have to assume. We're not projecting like a significant drop in enrollment
Right.
next year.
So, and this isn't the revenue that's coming from the state necessarily. So the legislature still has to pass a budget.
Right.
I think what you're asking is, so say everybody stops coming to school here, are they going to adjust our budget after that? They're not going to do that. So first of all, that's not likely to happen. Second of all, they're not going to adjust our aid mid-year. And because we also have reoccurring costs, and those costs are all related to teachers.
All right.
So we still would have those same teachers to fund, and so.
Would it affect the following school year, though?
It depends on what happens with that foundation aid formula, right? So right now, they're basing our state aid on our population from 2006. And so, as I said a couple meetings ago, there's going to be a different foundation aid formula. It's going to take population into account in some way, probably, I would assume. So however that shakes out, that'll determine what our aid is for future years.
Okay, great, thank you. Can I just ask, in addition to the population formula that they have right now, is that students enrolled in that formula, or is it just the population of the school district?
So it's students enrolled in the school district.
Okay. If I may, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Jeff, you mentioned BOCE, we use BOCES, we get reimbursement for BOCES aid a lot. Where does the BOCES aid come from? Is that, how does that get generated?
So I can actually, so at a future work session, I am actually going to talk about BOCES, some of our BOCES budget, and break down like some of the categories, because you've seen some of them in
I think they have a flyer now.
Yeah.
So that'll show you our BOCES aid. But the short answer to your question is that the BOCES aid comes from the taxpayers of the state of New York. And
so it's state funded?
It's state funded. It's called expense-based aid because the more you use it, the more aid you get back from it.
Okay.
And different categories of things carry different aids. Like you generally get a lot for building aid. You don't get a lot for, what's the thing that's low aided?
That's what?
What's the thing with low BOCES aid? Maybe communications or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's around 40 something.
Yeah, so between 40 and 70-ish%?
40 and 65.
65.
We've got a couple things that we can get up to in the 60%.
But like the other expense-based aids, Jeff, that are like that are what? Transportation?
So transportation is expense-based aid also that, as long as we spend what we expect in our transportation budget, we'll get that the following year as well. So this year, for instance, the transportation budget, we've spent a lot more than we did last year. So as much as the governor's proposal for the aid for this year for transportation aid, next year, we probably will get that increase or closer to it because the price in brakes alone for the buses has been like 66% higher than what we were paying last year. So
can you back up to the slide that just shows the state revenue piece?
Too far.
So this one shows, these are all of this aid is stuff that comes from the state. So also tax dollars, just state tax dollars.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, so I'd just like to ask a question to the board then. You're okay with me moving forward with that tax levy that I proposed, the 1.96%?
Yes.
All right, so lastly, next time we will talk, I'm just trying to get to the right slide. So Next time, we'll talk about transportation, operations, maintenance, and BOCES. And then following that, we'll talk about debt service, employee benefits, instructional, special education, and state aid. So by then, we should have our legislative budget should have come out. Okay.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, presentation and approval of prior Board of Education meeting minutes. Recommendation of the Board of Education, accept the meeting minutes from the January 10, 2023 meeting as submitted. Do I have a motion? Tony, thank you. Second? Thank you, Teresa. Questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to Board of Education standing committees. Audit Committee, did you meet?
We are going to meet. We're meeting March 1st from 5 to 6 to discuss audit RFPs in order to approve an auditor for future audits. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to add we had 3 responses to the
Is that good?
Yes, it is good.
0 would be
Yeah,
not good.
0 would be bad. All right. Moving on to Building and Grounds Committee report.
I think I talked about the playground. Sorry, I know this isn't Buildings and Grounds, but Buildings and Grounds hasn't met. But did I mention the playground committee meeting last time we met? So we did have one. We did have a playground committee meeting, and I wanted to make sure that you knew that we reviewed the designs from one architect, and we're going to look at least 2 additional architects, but the committee had a bunch of questions and provided some guidance, and so we're going to send that back to that architect and see if they can do what we wanted them to do. But it was really fun. We got to look at a design for a playground that looks really great and falls within our budget, which is good, and takes up the same footprint that our current playground takes up, and so that was exciting. So we'll have another meeting when I get the next design from the next vendor. But now we're getting tons of playground catalogs, so if anybody wants one of those, they're fun to page through.
All right, great. Anything to add on Building and Grounds? Nope. Okay. And lastly, Policy Committee.
The Policy Committee actually met this evening. We discussed the use of personal technology policy, and we're holding changes on that for now. We're going to assess the effectiveness of the change in the Wi-Fi, the procedure of the change in the Wi-Fi access, guest Wi-Fi access. So we're going to keep that in place for now and assess how it's going. We also reviewed the policies that have been flagged by Erie One, which is the company that reviews policies for us, thankfully, and that needed some updated language. So we will bring those to the board at the March meeting.
Thank you. Moving on to board resolutions. Resolution number 1, possible future COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Shall the parents, guardians of school-aged children in the district be surveyed by the Board of Education to determine their opinion on possible future state legislation that could require students attending public schools to be vaccinated against COVID-19 infection? Do I have a motion? Thank you, Avis. Do I have a second? Thank you, Teresa. Sorry, Francis, you got beat out.
Sorry.
Melissa, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right. Before we start the discussion, just a couple of reminders. One person has the floor at a time, and each member has 2 opportunities to speak. So who would like the floor first?
I could start.
Okay, Teresa.
Just going to keep it short and sweet. I feel strongly that it's not appropriate for the school board to act at this time. All committee members can reach out to state legislature to express their individual interests. It's their right to do so, and they should exercise that right if they would like.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Francis?
I want to just take this moment to state how strongly I feel that this survey is, we shouldn't even really be discussing this. A school board is not a legislative body. It's not a path for people to get access to the inner workings of the school. It's not to convey parents' feelings to the school. It's not even to control the content of the curriculum being taught in these buildings. It's purely an oversight that taxpayers have over the municipal corporations been established in the area for education. What Jeff just did is what the job is. Watching that, making sure that he's making a worthwhile plan for us to move forward and is safe and healthy for our tax dollars going forward. We can only set local policy, and we can only audit that the school is properly using those funds that are raised by the yearly tax collection. Additionally, we can't instruct the superintendent to do anything. God, I wish I could. Provided he's meeting those policies, those local policies we've previously established, and behaving in a way that meets his employment contract. Having said all of that, I also have no interest in doing this survey, because I believe that every member of this community should reach out to their elected official, your state senators, your assemblymen, the governor, and express your feelings one way or the other on it. But that's not the point of this body. This body is for overseeing the school. That's it. If we were to do a survey, we'd be reaching into an area where we have no jurisdiction and no control over, and that'd be disingenuous. It'd be dishonest to our community that there's anything we could do about it. So that's just my feeling on this.
Sorry, just to make a quick statement. I just wanted, I don't think I heard that correctly, but the board can direct me to do what it likes as a majority. And I will definitely act in the board's wishes to help them do what it wishes to do. I don't know if I heard that wrong.
Thank you. Next up, Sarah.
I do think that the survey is a good idea. We did receive a number of emails from community members and parents that kind of want to be ahead of this. Although I understand the points made to reach out to your legislative body, I think that that's also a good idea, but I think parents really feel strongly about this topic and therefore are reaching out to anyone and everyone that can help them with this plight. And that is what I believe the community reached out to us to do. And I think hearing them is part of our job.
Thank you. Avis, please.
I believe that this survey is very important to put out to the community and parents to figure out what the future of DCS will be. A reduction in students will create less funding for the school. And if, let's say, we have, 700 and some students right now, let's say we only end up with 350 next year, the funding is going to reduce at some point, which will cause the school to go into debt and possibly go out of business. If we don't look to the future using their survey to find out where parents stand and where the community stands, where is the school going to be at in the future? It's not going to exist anymore.
Thank you. Melissa or Tony?
I am not in favor of conducting a survey regarding the proposed legislation for a possible future COVID-19 vaccine requirement. I feel that I know that a Board of Education is tasked with specific and limited duties, namely to oversee the responsible use of funds, as Jeff did for us this evening, and the implementation of policy for this single school district. So surveying the community about potential statewide health-related legislation is well outside the purview of a Board of Education. I certainly feel there is value in surveys, most certainly, and our district conducts several of them, but those surveys focus on the mission of our district.
Thank you. Tony, do you want to add anything?
I don't think that we need to involve the parents to survey every single person. We're going to get this same kind of disagreements, and there's going to be this many more people for, against, and whatnot. I think that we have a job here to educate our students and give them the best possible choices for their education. We don't have control over what is going to happen statewide. I doubt that this thing is really going to even be there. I think right now, I think it's in our best interest to not have a survey, and I think that our community members may just support that. I don't feel that there's. I think that we did get a handful of emails. We did get a handful of people reaching out to us, but I think that the people who are agreeing that saying this isn't our choice to do. This is the state. If the state mandates it, the state mandates it. What are we going to do? I don't really think that a survey at this point is good for anybody.
Thanks for your comments. As for me, I feel the purpose of a school survey is to provide information which can help guide the school's operation. A possible statewide vaccine requirement is outside of the school's mission and the school's authority. So we could conduct a survey, but since we have no control over the issue, the survey wouldn't be useful in guiding operation of the school. In addition to a survey not being helpful, it could mislead some people into thinking that the school has control over this issue. And it could even stir up bad feelings within the school community. Why take these risks when there's nothing to be gained? I don't support conducting a survey. Does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Okay, let's have a vote then. All in favor of the resolution? Okay, all opposed? Aye.
Nay.
Or nay?
Nay.
Any abstentions? All right. Moving on to possible future COVID-19 vaccine mandate resolution number 2. Shall the DCS Board of Education send a letter to state representatives, including the governor, expressing an opinion on the possible future statewide COVID-19 vaccine requirement for students? Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Teresa, thank you. Second? Sarah, thank you. All right. Who would like to start this discussion?
Start again if you want.
Okay, Teresa.
It's sort of repetitive, I guess. I still feel strongly that a letter on behalf of the entire school district without full consensus is not appropriate. Sending a letter saying 20% think this, 80% think that, it's not appropriate. I continue to understand this to be a legislative objective and believe proper channels should be utilized for effective governing, and I appreciate the government we have.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next?
I agree with Teresa. She said it better than I could ever say it anyways.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
I do support sending a letter to the governor and expressing our community and parents' opinion on this topic. I believe it's our job to be their voice, and though ultimately, I understand where this fits in with the legislature and the piece. It's about the parents and the community being heard and expressing that and being able to exercise that.
Thank you. Who else would like to? Avis, please.
I strongly agree with sending a letter to the governor. And I am strongly against the word opinion because information that would be sent to the governor should be factual and not opinionated.
Okay. Would someone else like to speak that we haven't heard from yet?
I'll go. I don't think that we should be sending a letter. I really don't think that political advocacy, one way or the other, is an activity that a school district should get involved with. This year we're receiving, according to Jeff's report, almost $9 million in aid from the state. And unfortunately, New York State politicians have proved they can be petty and vindictive. And I don't want to do anything to possibly damage our standing next year. Um, Certainly not alone. So I don't want to risk losing any goodwill we have that, you know, I want them thinking about Duanesburg purely for our fantastic academic performance and our scholastic achievement and how great our our sports teams are doing and all the great things we're out there doing. I don't want to be a district that's on a list that's troublemakers for this. You know, in other situations, I absolutely support the district joining the voice of other districts using BOCES or the New York State PTA or the School Boards Association rather, or the council superintendents to do lobbying to further legislative efforts that help the whole state. It just doesn't feel like this is a situation where, as an individual district, we should be advocating one way or another for statewide action.
Okay, Melissa, I think we've heard from everyone but you.
Okay. So, yeah, I think it, again, is repetitive, as Teresa said. It's, you know, I strongly believe that recommendations around public health should be made by experts in the field of public health and not by lay people like me who have been elected to oversee the finances and policies of this school district. In the case of the possible vaccine requirement that may or may not even be brought to the floor of the Senate in the state, I think it would be an overreach of the board's role and responsibility to express an opinion in any direction. It has been suggested to us that there are a large number of other districts that have sent letters opposing the legislation. I've done quite a lot of research on this, and by my count, there are five districts out of the 731 public school districts in New York State that have sent letters regarding this bill. If there are others, they have not published their correspondence. That represents well less than 1% of public schools in this state. So I think what that tells us is that it's outside the purview of school districts and school boards of education to offer an opinion on issues like this. That said, we have our legislators, depending on your address in Duanesburg, they're Neil Breslin or Peter Oberacker. You can go to nysenate.gov and follow the prompts to express your opinion on any number and any manner of legislative issues. And if you need assistance in contacting those legislators, let us know. We'll happily help you with that.
For me, I believe a possible statewide vaccine requirement is outside of the school's mission and the school's authority. Also, vaccination has become a politically divisive issue. For these reasons, I believe that it is inappropriate for the Board of Education to take a position on this issue with or without a survey, and especially when there is an alternative available. People can contact their state representatives directly to express their opinion. I'm not in favor of sending a letter. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Avis, please.
You had said it's not within the board's purview, but my question is, where is the policy on that? Is there a policy on that? Do you have a policy number where it's not within the board's purview? When the whole mindset is to protect the future of the school, isn't that what the school does?
That's what the school does, but we have policies on things that we do. We tend not to have policies on things that we don't do. You know, I think that would kind of be covered under our mission. And, you know, you could look in the policy manual and search for something that applies to this, but the bottom line is, you know, the different members are expressing, you know, how they interpret the policy.
Oh, I understand, but when you say it's outside of the board's purview, meaning board's duties and responsibilities, I just would like to know where that states that in a policy.
Well, I think because it's kind of a negative, you're not likely to find that in policy. You know, we don't have the authority to command the military of the United States, but you're not going to see a statement to that effect in our policy. So I don't know if that's a good example, but
no, it's not.
You can't. Policy says what we do and some things we don't, but it's not going to say every possible thing that we don't do. But anyway, I think we're getting a little bit of field from the resolution here. So I appreciate everyone's comments. And does anyone else have anything they want to add?
Shane, I just wanted, because I know we can only speak twice, just kind of thinking, it kind of has to do with, I guess, the surveys, but to me, they're kind of connected, like a survey might imply possibly doing a letter. And I'm just, there's all different kinds of ways to do surveys, and I think, you know, there are companies that are hired to write surveys to get you some accurate information. But I think when, like, anyone writes a survey, we might not get information that isn't skewed. And I'm very uncomfortable with just creating a survey for something that might give us some information that's not correct. And I'm not in favor of spending school money on a survey company to do that for us. And also commenting, I think the New York School Boards Association might be able to answer your question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's a sort of like a user's manual to being a Board of Education member New York, for NISBA, and that is, it outlines all of the roles and responsibilities. Of course, it doesn't list all of the things that we don't do, but it does list the things that we do.
Anyone else? All right, well, let's have a vote. All in favor of the resolution?
Aye.
All opposed to the resolution?
Nay.
Any abstentions? Moving on to financial. Accept financial reports. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the appropriation status, revenue status, ECA, and treasurer's reports ending December 31st, 2022, ECA report ending January 31st, 2023, General Warrant A23 in the amount of $256,546.83 dated January 19, 2023. General Warrant A25 in the amount $539,339.91. And Capital Warrant HP10, $589, dated February 1st, 2023, as provided and recommended by the Treasurer and Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion? Melissa, thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Francis, thanks. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve contract with Municipal Services Bureau. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the contract for services between Municipal Services Bureau and Duanesburg Central School District to provide an online payment acceptance solution, including credit, debit card, and e-check for school tax collection as recommended by Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. This agreement shall not be binding on the parties until authorized and signed by each party's respective representatives. Do I have a motion? Tony, thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Teresa, thank you. Questions or comments?
I have a question.
Francis?
Usually with these types of things, there tends to be a fee. Is there any idea what that fee will be?
Fee will be paid by the person using credit card payment. So
Mhm.
this is just a switch. We had a credit card payment before.
Okay.
We are not using that vendor anymore, so now we're just switching vendors. So they'll still pay you'll still pay like the 2 or 3% credit card fee
To
for
cover the
processing.
credit card processing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you had a question?
Yep. I was just wondering, why is this backdated to 5/20/22? By the provider's authorized signature, they dated it as 5/20/22.
So they're starting the setup with this. This is just, so BOCES is going through and setting up this application with MSB. So that's when they started the agreement with MSB. And then they sent it out to all the districts that use BOCES for tax collection. So we use the BOCES for the tax collection for electronic payment. So they did an RFP, and MSB was the company that answered the RFP. So they had started this process back in '22,
Okay,
and that's why it's taken so long to come to us.
okay, thank you.
They've been talking about it for quite a while.
Jeff, was our last credit card vendor for this process through BOCES as well?
Yeah, it was. Yep.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next item, approve agreement with Parsons Child and Family Center, Northern Rivers. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the school district tuition agreement between Parsons Child and Family Center, Northern Rivers, Waynesburg, CSD, for the 2022-2023 school year as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent. Questions or comments?
I just, oh goodness, it feels really loud. Do we have students accessing this year, Jim? Or is this just like in the event that we have a student that requires a placement at Northern Rivers?
I think it's in the event that we have a student who
Okay,
requires
so
this.
we're
to have it
prepared
in place.
in the event that that is required.
That's
Perfect.
right.
Thank you.
Sarah, please.
Do we pay anything to keep this contract in place, whether or not we have any students?
Nope.
Okay.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Next item, accept food service administrative review corrective action plan. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the food service administrative review corrective action plan and response letter as provided and recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion?
A motion.
Thank you, Melissa. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Francis. Questions or comments?
I just had one question. Who is going to be providing the staff training?
The food director.
The food director is going to? Okay, thanks.
This is just documenting the process. This isn't like,
It is. We had a very good audit. So they come every 3 years and they look at our food service program. And there were corrective actions. We sat there in the meeting, and by the time we got to the meeting at the end of the day, most everything was already corrected.
Okay.
And we had a plan for it. So.
Awesome. Thank
Great.
you.
They are very thorough. They found that one expired
They did. They are very.
can of peaches or whatever it might have been.
Yeah, they were proud of themselves for that one.
Sarah, you had a question?
I do. I thought we were partnering with BOCES on this, so in essence, shouldn't they also be getting this review done?
So
Why is the review being done just with DCS?
it is. So it is our program that was audited. Our BOCES food director was here for the whole process. The years that they had looked at were actually years prior, so they actually didn't even. I mean, the can of peaches, I guess that was this year. But everything else that they had reviewed were, or they looked at a lot of stuff from last year. They had asked us to pull records for. Of course, it does reflect back on BOCES, especially in future years, right? If we are audited in 3 years and we have some referrals too, but a lot of what we've got audited for this time was pretty much our program.
And remember that all the food service workers, they're still
our
central workers. The only person who's a BOCES employee is the food service director, and then they also have the office full of people that do all the purchasing, all that stuff too.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, also, I'd like to thank Mary Jewell for getting us on a good even keel there.
You'll send her a can of peaches. Just kidding. She deserves much more than that. It was just sitting right there.
Anyone else? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next item. Approve agreement between the district and Duanesburg Education Support Association. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the agreement by and between the district and Duanesburg Education Support Association dated February 14, 2023, and approves the payment of money contained therein. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Francis, thank you. A second? Tony, thanks. Questions or comments?
I do. I just noticed that the period began July 1st, 2022.
The period of the contract?
It says 2022 to June
the contract
2025.
This is
Don't
an
we vote
adjust-
on the contract
This is
prior
an
to them
adjustment
starting?
for an
It's
individual
referencing
employee.
the contract.
Oh, so it says we're amending it.
Yes.
Okay. It doesn't say that on the document. Okay.
No, that's the whole period of the contract, if I'm understanding you right.
In the
So-
first sentence, it says that, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, last financial item. Approve new position. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, a head bus driver position will be created effective February 14, 2023. This position will be a non-competitive civil service position. The terms of employment will follow the terms and conditions of the Duanesburg Support Staff Association contract effective July 1, 2021 through June 30, 2024. Do I have a motion? Teresa, thank you. Second? Melissa, thanks. Questions or comments?
I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. I was looking at this one when you were doing the last one.
You want to add anything?
Just that this is a position that existed in the DSSA contract, in the contract prior to this one, and a whole bunch of contracts before that too, and we took it out, and now we're adding it back in. We took it out because we didn't have a head bus driver, and now we have a need to have a head bus driver.
Jim, will there be a pay scale for that? Will that be a further future thing we'll go on?
Yep, so there's a posting right now, and then you'll be able to act on the appointment at that pay scale.
Just curious, are we adding this into the budget coming up?
It's being considered in the budget.
Okay, so it will be included, or?
There will be a savings in the budget.
So this essentially might come out of a fund balance if need be?
It will be a savings in the budget. So it wouldn't necessarily need to come out of the fund balance. So moving forward, we'll have a savings by creating this position.
So it's a decrease, not an increase?
It is a decrease.
So what position is this replacing then?
So we're gonna have an executive session.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
It's okay.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving on to other. Approve Committee on Special Education, Committee on Preschool Special Education minutes. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the CSE and CPSE meetings and their minutes from the January 10, 11, 19, 24, 25, 26, and February 1, 6, 9, and 10, 2023 meetings. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Avis. Melissa, will you second? Thanks. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve 2023-2024 school calendar. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the 2023-2024 school year calendar as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Francis, thank you. Second? Tony, is that a second? Thanks. Got to take them where I can get them. Questions or comments?
It's just slightly different than the last version that you saw. So instead, there are no longer 2 conference days at the beginning of September. Instead, we took one of those days out, starting school on the 6th instead of the 7th. The 6th is the same day that schools are going to start all around the region. And then we added the conference day back to March, March 18th, which is conference day for the region as well. So now all of our conference days are the same regionally except for November 17th. That one's peculiar to us because it's a parent-teacher conference day. Most other districts in the region have the election day, the 7th, as their conference day, and we don't have that. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that there's a weird bonus holiday in March. March 15th is a weird bonus holiday that does not, you can look it up on any calendar. I'm sure that there is some kind of holiday associated with that day. My daughter actually, she tells me what holiday it is every day. Her favorite is National Middle Child Day because she's a middle child. So the 15th is not a holiday, but we had an extra day in our calendar, and so we were able to add that. And so that is the holiday that was added by most of the schools regionally, and it happens to make a nice 4-day weekend for students and families, not for teachers, but for students and families in March, which is a very difficult month to get through sometimes. So those are the main differences that are here as opposed to last time. And I don't know if this was the same last time, but there's 2 half days that we're going to use as professional development days, one in December, one in January. And then there's another half day in May that we'll use for professional development day, but that also coincides with budget vote day, so that there's no instruction happening in the buildings during budget vote.
That's great.
I think that's it. So we all did get together, all the superintendents from the region get together and compare all their calendars so that we're mainly on the same page. And this is where we sort of arrived at.
I have a question.
Yep.
Sorry. So let's say we have more than the allotted snow days. So would March 15th be taken away or just another day extended at the end of the school year?
So now that we are able to call remote instruction days, we don't ever have to really be in that situation again, because after we get through the allotted number of snow days that we have on the calendar, we can call a remote day and have instruction. It's not ideal, but we can still have instruction if needed.
Okay.
So that's the answer.
Next year, is the Friday before Memorial Day still a bonus day, or
What's
is that
Memorial
a set day?
Memorial Day, the 24th through 27th. Yeah, that day might be, that 24th, I think, is the bonus day if we don't use all of those snow days. So that's the day that we could take back if we need to take it back to get to 180.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to approve field trip. Recommendation that the Duanesburg Board of Education approve the March 8, 2023 digital media class field trip to New York City as recommended by the high school principal. Do I have a motion?
I'll
Melissa,
second.
thank you. Teresa, will you second?
Yes.
Questions or comments?
I want to go.
Yep, same.
Yeah.
There's already too many chaperones, huh?
What's that?
There's too many chaperones, can't
already,
go?
yeah. So very small number of students. Our communications person comes from the world of television, and she happens to know the people working on the Drew Barrymore show, and so was able to get the media production class into that show and then backstage, I think, too. And so they're going to be taking an Amtrak down to the city and spending some time in an actual TV studio, which is kind of exciting because our person who does our news every day will be going, and he actually just got into a journalism program himself, so I'm sure that they're all looking forward to it.
Great. Any other questions? Sarah?
I'm just curious, is one of our school buses going? You just said Amtrak, never mind. I
Amtrak,
apologize.
yep.
Okay.
So there might be a bus that, I don't know.
Because it says assigned buses suburban, so that's what kind of.
I think that there's a Suburban that's taking them from the school to the Amtrak station.
Okay.
And then from there, is the school bus picking them up at the Amtrak station?
Yep. So
Yep.
they'll pick them up from the Amtrak station at the end of the day.
Awesome. Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Another field trip. Approved field trip. Recommendation that the Duanesburg Board of Education approve the March 30, 2023 AP World History, AP US History, 3D, AP, and UHS Art field trip to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Titanic, the exhibition in New York City, as recommended by the high school principal. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Sarah, thank you. Second? Francis?
Second.
Questions or comments on this field trip?
So do you this one's pretty self-explanatory. There's a lot of classes going to this field trip. It's 40 students in all. They're going to these 2 locations while they're in New York City, and they're taking a charter bus.
Sounds cool. Sarah, please.
Any more chaperones needed for this one?
I believe they are looking for 1 additional chaperone.
Anyone else?
Are there any larger field trips left anymore? Like, used to be an entire grade would go to a whale watch, or an entire grade went to the city, and, do those types of things still happen? I'm just curious.
Like
more
in the
than anything.
world or here or what?
Both. Both.
Yeah, there's occasionally large field trips. So we haven't had anybody request them, but I'm not opposed to the concept of larger field trips. I like kids traveling. I think it's a good experience. I think it's always great when they to get people some.
I mean,
going to
times
other
have
places.
changed a little bit, but when we went to the whale watch in 10th grade, there was a significant number of people that had never seen the ocean before.
Yeah.
Or had never been out of New York State before.
I imagine that there's a significant number of people who haven't been to the city.
That was years ago. I'm not,
Yeah.
I think the school's still doing the joint junior senior field trip.
The band field trip?
Well, the one
Band music, yeah.
it's not just band. I remember, weren't they joining the junior and senior class like they went to Washington, D.C.?
Oh yeah, we still do the Washington
Yeah.
D.C. field trip. Yep.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to personnel. Accept resignations. Recommendation of the Board of Education accept the resignation of Katie Nadelsky, cleaner, retroactive to January 6, 2023. Do I have a motion? Melissa, thank you. Second? Sarah, thanks. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Amend tenure appointment period. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the recommendation of the superintendent to adjustment of the tenure period for Deborah Cannon, special education teacher, to be effective February 13, 2023 to February 12, 2026, due to prior tenure appointment. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Avis. A second?
I'll second.
Teresa, thanks. Questions or comments?
Just so you know, I'm not sure that everybody knows that the probationary period for teachers is 4 years, and so she had been, when you're tenured before at a different place, your probationary period is only 3 years, and so we just missed that when we appointed Deb Cannon, that she had been tenured at a prior school.
Great.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Approve appointments. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following appointments as recommended by the superintendent. All appointments are employees at will, and appointment at this time does not guarantee employment for the entire school term or year. Stacy McNally, substitute teacher, effective January 2023, $105 per day. Kevin Swintek, substitute teacher, effective February 16, 2023, $105 per day. Do I have a motion? Tony, thank you. Second? Melissa, thank you. Questions or comments on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next, approve appointment R. Cornell, Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Rebecca Cornell to a 4-year probationary appointment as a health and PE teacher in the health tenure area, Master's Step 2, prorated for the 2022-2023 school year, commencing February 1, 2023, and ending January 31, 2027, contingent upon compliance with the requirements of the education law. Do I have a motion? Melissa, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Sarah. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Final personnel item. Approve reassignment T. Gordon. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following reassignment as recommended by the superintendent and assistant superintendent of management services effective February 14, 2023. Thomas Gordon, school transportation supervisor, civil service permanent appointment with a probationary term of February 14, 2023 through February 14, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Teresa. Second? Tony, thanks. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to an informational item. The BOCES annual meeting is March 29th, and the budget vote election April 19th, and annual meeting dinner reservations are due by March 3rd.
I think that students, culinary students, I think, do cook for that program, and
Yeah.
they're excellent.
I went last year, and it's a free dinner. You got to get there, of course, but it's a free dinner, and the dinner was quite good. And you know what they talked about was relatively interesting too. So I will probably go again this year. So there is a deadline to sign up, and I believe we all got an email about that a while ago. So.
So is dinner the night of the meeting, I take it? Probably not the vote election date?
I believe it's the night of the annual meeting, yes.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. So that's that. Any other questions on that?
Just one, Celeste, the budget vote election, that's on a meeting night that we already have, right? It's not like the weird morning meeting that we used to do? No. Okay, so it's like incorporated. All right.
Okay, next item, executive session. Motion to move to executive session to discuss personnel issues. Can I have a
So
motion?
motion.
Francis, thank you. Second? Melissa, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Great. So for those of you in the audience, we're going to go into executive session. And when we come out of executive session, we're just going to end the regular meeting. So there's no real reason to hang around. Thank you very much.